I love the fact that people still have a passion for the game. And it's probably my favorite project ever that I worked on. I mean, I started making games on my old Commodore 128 back in high school, and I made maybe 100 games. I still have them all on like a box of discs, floppy disks. But then in college, I got into modding, and I modded Doom, and I made like an Aliens Doom mod. And then after that, Quake came out, and I did a mod called Ultimate Quake, which was basically everything I could possibly think of to put into a single mod. And so I sent that mod to Raven. Someone had played it and told me about Raven. They were really looking for people, and they hired me right then, and I just packed up my whole dorm room into my car and drove out there. That would be 97, like April 97. And I figured it would just be like a fun summer job. And then I've been here ever since.
When the word comes through that you've got, I'm assuming, the license to the Jedi Knight series, what's going through your head when you realize that you're in a position to make a lightsaber combat system? What's the first thing that you are trying to achieve?
But actually, when we first got the project, we weren't supposed to do lightsabers or force powers. It was supposed to be like a Dark Forces, because we had mostly been known as a first-person shooter studio. We had just finished Star Trek Voyager Elite Force, and it was actually kind of cool. We got a note from George Lucas's son saying that he really enjoyed Elite Force. I don't think the two are tied. Like, that's not why we got Star Wars, but it was kind of a cool touch.
It helps, I assume.
Certainly doesn't hurt. It was supposed to be like just a Dark Forces thing, but we knew we could do third-person action. We had just done Heretic 2, which had third-person melee and action and stuff. So we took, I think it was about 3 weeks, is all we took to make the prototype of Jedi Outcast, and that's what we showed at E3. On the first day, I painted the Klingons white and put black eyes on them, and those were our stormtroopers. And we took the third-person animation system from Heretic 2, ported that over, and start putting in lightsabers and force powers and enemy Jedi that you could fight. And we did it in 3 weeks and sent that to them. They're like, oh, okay, you can do a full Jedi game.
Outcast only took 10 months to develop, which seems like an extremely short window of time. How did you manage to create such a comprehensive system within such a short window?
It helped that we had a completely finished game to start with, because we'd taken actually 2.5 years to do Elite Force. So by the time we got to Jedi, a lot of that stuff had already been done, and we could focus on just the gameplay and making maps and assets. Looking back on it, it's crazy to think that we did it in 10 months. It was out, I believe, was it March 2002? We delivered that prototype in, I believe it was May of 2000.
When combat's first being assembled during that development period, how did you want players to feel?
My personal goal was to give freedom to the player. Give them as much freedom as possible. We had transition animations for every lightsaber attack to every other lightsaber attack. And I wanted the force powers to be intuitive. Once you've equipped it, you just press a button and it does what you think it does. As far as the lightsaber combat itself, my first influence was probably Bushido Blade. You pick your weapon and you just kind of pace back and forth, kind of walk around each other trying to figure out who's going to go first. And then you just kind of just run at each other and attack, and you might just kill each other with one hit. But a lot of it was about kind of the pacing and the spacing and how you're going to, when you're going to attack and the timing. And I wanted it to be like that and less like necessarily a fighting game or a button masher. So that was my goal, was to have some strategy to it.
If I'm not mistaken, Bushido Blade also had combat stances.
Yep.
And is that pretty much where the stance system came in with Outcast? Is that the inspiration for that system?
Yeah, I'd say that's probably the germ of the idea. And then where I took the stance system is I wanted you to have choice when fighting other lightsaber wielders. And I felt like fighting a bunch of stormtroopers is a different style than fighting lightsaber users, right? You want fast style for chopping down a bunch of stormtroopers. If you're fighting another Jedi, you maybe want something that's a little bit slower and more deliberate. I think a lot of times in games, the lightsaber feels like you're just hitting them with a stick, and it doesn't feel like it's a lightsaber. Like having hit enemies too many times with it, like a stormtrooper hitting them 5 times with a lightsaber is kind of ridiculous. I don't know. We wanted to just feel like it's dangerous and that it takes some skill to wield.
I'm curious how much environmental design contributed to your programming of the combat? Were you always aware that there was going to be this sort of vast repertoire of sort of traversal mechanics?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that is always kind of a tug of war between game programmers and map designers. A good example of this was in Hexen 2, actually. I designed these were-tigers that could roll at you, they could throw up a shield to reflect your shots back at you, they could leap through the air, they could dodge to the side, and then they put him on a map with narrow passages over lava. So he's like jumping into the lava and rolling into the lava and like doesn't have room to maneuver. And so it's something where you have to really work together on that. One thing that was nice about this is we knew that at least in the areas where you fought Jedi, that was going to be a bit more controlled. We knew where those were going to be. So I think that helped in this game, as opposed to some previous games I'd been on where it was kind of like develop both things in a vacuum and then put them together and hope they work.
There's a part in Academy where you're walking down, just like you were saying, this narrow path. I think lava is in it as well. But the combat system, I think, doesn't lose anything from being in a confined space. It sort of suits all environmental types. I guess it's all up to the player to play how they feel.
Yeah, and I tried to make sure the AI was smart about ledges and stuff like that, so I made them smart about not side flipping off. And I made all different variations of the Reborn. I gave the designers lots of different types of enemies to place so they could decide what kind of encounter they wanted to have in that particular place.
How did force powers impact the design of combat? Was that something you developed side by side with the combat, or were they kind of supplementary?
We discussed it a lot ahead of time and how the force powers would work. I wanted to make sure the powers worked together with the lightsaber as much as possible. And again, just give you lots of choices with the force powers and how you use them.
So Outcast releases in 2002. Does discussions about developing Academy start immediately? What's the conversation going on amongst the development team after Outcast's release?
Yeah, I think we pretty much immediately went into developing Academy, if I recall. I think we knew we wanted to do one right away. We wanted to do a sequel. We had ideas for it. We knew that we couldn't get away with taking all of Kyle's powers away from him again, so we wanted to do an apprentice story. We pretty much wanted to jump into it right away. For me personally, if there's one defining characteristic of the work I did on Academy, it's customization. Letting you choose your own character, letting you modify your character, choose male or female. I wanted you to be able to build your own lightsaber. We ended up just doing the hilt in color, but I had like a mini game where you actually assemble it and choose a crystal and have to put it together. I wanted to make the game as moddable as possible because I saw how much the mod community really latched on to Jedi Outcast, and that was really a pleasant surprise to me. And I wanted to really encourage that as much as possible because I was a modder myself and I knew how important having good tools are, or how making it accessible is important. So I externalized everything about NPCs into just text files so that you could easily make more NPCs and control everything about them. The weapons, the lightsabers, the vehicles, externalize as much of that as possible.
The new lightsabers, the dual wielding and the double-sided lightsaber are the most palpable, immediately noticeable changes to Academy. Did their inclusion change the way gameplay worked?
Not really. The way I'd written the animation system for Outcast, the way we'd written that, it was pretty easy to extend to include the dual sabers and the saber staff as just two more styles. But no, I don't think it really affected gameplay that much as far as just giving the player more choices and just personal choice about how they like to play.
But moving on with the sort of aftermath of Academy's release and the modding scene, as you mentioned before, it's active to this day. It's extremely popular still. I mean, what's it like to see such an active modding community that to this day remains active?
I love it. I mean, I'm amazed that people are still modding it, and not amazed in like a bad way. I'm amazed at the longevity of it. I'm not totally surprised because we did give them a lot of freedom, and it is a platform to play around in one of the most popular franchises of all time, you know? And I do think that the freedom we gave players in the lightsaber combat and the force powers was a big appeal for it because it made it a very skill-based game. Because of the freedom, you could do lots of different things and get better and better at how you chain things together and how you used all those abilities. And I think that's part of its longevity, is that skill-based aspect. And then the modding on top of that. I would say the community really owns the game now. The way they keep it alive, they keep playing it, they keep modding it, and I love it. As a former modder myself, I love the fact that people still have a passion for the game. And it's probably my favorite project ever that I worked on.
It's funny because melee combat systems have kind of come back into vogue over the past few years. If you look at games like Chivalry and more recently with games like For Honor,
Oh, yeah.
it seems like the environment is a much more fertile for another Star Wars game to come along that has a more complex approach to a similar lightsaber system that was in Outcast. Is it possible that Star Wars sees a return to a more in-depth lightsaber game?
I'm shocked that there hasn't been a lightsaber combat game since Jedi, like one that focused on lightsaber combat. I can't believe that hasn't been made. And every time I hear about a new Star Wars game, I'm like, oh, maybe this is the one, you know? Force Unleashed was more about the Force powers and less about lightsaber dueling. And then other ones, there just haven't been, the lightsaber is more button mashy or whatever. I wish there would be more like that. I would love to see a really good melee combat focused lightsaber game, a Star Wars game. Hopefully they'll do it. Activision for a while had a deal with LucasArts to make the games, but now EA does, so that's out of my reach.
Just for your own reflection, I think very widely Jedi Outcast and Jedi Academy are considered by far to have the best lightsaber combat system in any game ever. What does it feel like to sort of hold that achievement of having created something that well renowned?
It's not so much that it's the best, it's that people enjoyed it. I think the fact that people still say it's the best says more about the fact that no one's ever really tried to make another one, right? To make something better. Maybe they just don't think enough people would want it. I think people would love it. I hope that someone does. But in the meantime, it is a nice feeling to know that people enjoyed the decisions we made.
I would be curious to know why wasn't there a third Jedi Knight title from Raven? Did Academy underperform sales-wise, or was it just time to move on?
I think the reviews for Academy were kind of a downer for us. I think because we came out so quickly after the last one, everyone kind of saw it as more of an expansion pack. Academy didn't get as strong of a reaction as we would have liked. But the people who did like it stuck with it for a long time, so that's satisfying.
And are still playing it to this day. So.
And they're still playing it to this day, so that makes me happy.
Hey guys, thanks so much for checking out this video. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more from me in the future. I'll see you next time.